Welcome to the training camp edition of Dolphins in Depth, a podcast brought to you by the Miami Herald. I'm your host, Miami Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly. I'm joined by the legend, Florida Sports Buzz or South Florida Sports Buzz. What is it, Barry? I just is it
at FLA Sports Buzz is a Twitter account, but to be called a legend, my goodness, I'm going to fall over in my chair. Thank you.
You are a legend, Barry. Come on. You know I started as your intern in 1994. So that's many, many moons ago. Eve, can you name our boss?
Yves Cologne.
There you go. All right.
And in fact, I was coming off deadline covering a Heat Portland Trailblazers game last year, and Yves Cologne greets me as I was running down from press row in Portland at the Moda Center, of all things. But things people don't care about. Anyway, on to the Dolphins.
On to the Dolphins. And what we experienced today is the start of actually conditioning drill where they're going to run multiple sprints the length of the field. There's a specific time you got to meet. If you can't pass it, then you go on the PUP or the NFI for being fat and out of shape. And you eventually cannot practice until you pass it. Majority of players pass it. I think that there's possibility that there could be some defensive tackles, nose tackles, offensive linemen who do not pass it, but we shall see. Over the weekend, Dolphins got a little bit of surprising news in terms of deep edge player Shaquil Barrett, who was a player, the free agent that they signed for 1 year, $7 million deal from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was the Andrew Van Ginkel replacement. Instead of giving Andrew Van Ginkel $10 million of guaranteed money, they decided to give Shaq Barrett $7 million of guaranteed money. And here we go. The 30-year-old decides that he doesn't have it in his heart, doesn't want to play football, and is basically retiring before training camp starts. How were you surprised, and how did you think that impacted the roster, Barry?
Well, Omar, it's like clockwork. Every 20 years, a Dolphin retires in July. Ricky Williams in 2004, and now in 2024, Shaq Barrett. It was a surprise to the team. It was a surprise to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who acknowledged on his Fox WSBN 7 show on Sunday night that he was surprised when he got the call from Barrett. He said that Shaq Barrett told him the decision is final. He wants to spend more time with his family. Obviously, he had a tragedy in his life last year when his daughter drowned. He came back and played a full season for the Buccaneers last year. So it's obviously a surprise when any player who gets that kind of money and who's as accomplished as Shaq Barrett and not yet at the point where he needed to retire. It's surprising when a player like that does retire. It's hurtful in the sense that obviously without Chubb and without Phillips and to an extent without Cameron Good, they badly need edge rushers. The move on Sunday left them without a single experienced, healthy, accomplished edge rusher on their roster, which is a pretty shocking statement. The only experienced edge rushers they have pretty much are Quentin Bell, who's played all of 9 games and 60 snaps in his NFL career, and the linebacker who they signed from the Giants who can play some inside, some outside.
Cam Brown.
Exactly. Right. So clearly they need help. That's why on Monday they auditioned Manuel Ogbah and Yannick Ngakoue with the potential of signing one or both of those in the next 24 hours. So I don't know that will be a dramatic drop down from Barrett. You could make the case that Ogbah is still every bit as good as a pass rusher as Barrett. I want your thoughts on that. So I don't think this leaves them in a terrible position, but obviously it's hardly ideal on the eve of training camp.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was surprising, but then not so surprising because he lived in Tampa and he only showed up for minicamp. So at no point did he decide to join the team in the offseason. And now established veterans, guys who are 9 years in their career, what do they need OTAs for? I say that all the time. They really don't. It's busy work. And when he practiced, he looked pretty good. But I am all for, I know I've covered this league long enough, and I know if your heart isn't in it, this is not something that you want to do. And in a worst case scenario, what some veterans can and have done is they show up for camp and, oh, my neck and my back, and they I'm not going to say fake an injury because I'm pretty sure every NFL player has something that hurts for a very long time. And they go on IR. Will Fuller cashed a big check from the Miami Dolphins without ever playing a significant snaps for that team. And this was after having to be talked out of retiring and coming back. So you don't necessarily know what his motive, what was his mindset, but certainly playing in the NFL wasn't in his heart. And the same thing for Shaq Barrett. Congratulations to him on making that decision. What it does do is it leaves the Dolphins with $7 million worth of cap space. It certainly elevates Chop Robinson and Mohamed Kamara. If you want it, rookies, here it is. It's on a silver platter. You want to be a day one starter in the NFL, here you go. The one concern I do have about both players is throughout the course of my career, I have learned, especially for those edge positions, whether you're a 3-4 end or a 4-3 end or playing the outside linebacker position in a hybrid, you are the edge setter. And that's a very important role. Edge setters and nose tackles, there are two very important roles when it comes to stopping the run. And rookies annually struggle when it comes to setting the edge. Look at Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips didn't play until the second half of his rookie season, significant snaps. Why? Because he struggled setting the edge. And Jalen Phillips looks like a Greek god. He looks like an Adonis where there's less than 10% body fat. He's like he's 6 foot. What is Jalen Phillips? Jesus Lord. Jalen Phillips is 6'5", 263 pounds. And as a rookie, he struggled setting the edge. And, they couldn't play him early in the season. Now you're expecting smaller, less established, less hulking players in terms of Chop Robinson and Mohamed Kamara to go out there and immediately set the edge as rookies. And that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Now, Emmanuel Ogbah is not necessarily the greatest edge setter, but he's more of a 5-technique 3-4 defensive end, which I think is an important role for this team to have, considering they do run the 3-4. He's way more established than anybody that they signed this offseason, except for Calais Campbell. And same thing with Yannick Ngakoue. He is a pass rushing demon. They're two completely different players, but I can argue to you that they need both. So it makes sense to me that you sign them both. And you don't have to sign them to substantial contracts. I think both of them are, I'm throwing out if you sign Calais Campbell, who's a Hall of Fame caliber player for $2 million, I have a hard time thinking that you're not going to be able to sign both players for 2 to 3 or put some 2 with incentives or playing time. The one thing that does trouble me a little bit is the fact that they're established veterans, vested veterans. If they are on the initial 53-man roster, their contracts for the year is going to have to be guaranteed. This could be a situation where you wink, wink, hey, you're going to carry you through training camp. We're probably going to cut you week 1, but then bring you back week 2. But at this point, I'm pretty sure both individuals are just looking for an employer, and an employer with a great location.
Yes, and they're going to end up making far less money than they did last season. And Ngakoue got $10.5 million for the Bears. He ended up starting 13 games, had 4 sacks for them. Ogbah obviously had the distinction of being the highest paid Dolphin from a base salary standpoint last year at $16 million, and never really earned the trust of Vic Fangio in his system. Obviously, Ogbah's still a good player. He just wasn't a particularly good fit in the
earned the trust, or the man just hated him?
And that's putting it nicely. What's funny is Ogbah has handled himself like a pro throughout. But I remember when I asked Fangio last year if he liked how Ogbah handled it, he sort of gave an answer like, well, he's made clear he hasn't been happy about it, which I found odd. Ogbah, to me, handled it extremely well, and he likes living here. So coming back here in this defense, I think, makes sense. Here's the thing that would concern me about Chop Robinson, besides the excellent point you raised about rookies on the edge playing the run. And we saw, as you mentioned, Jalen Phillips not effective against the run, not trusted with the run year 1, became a very good player, I think, against the run, better than serviceable, I think, in year 2 of his career. The other concern with me about Chop is the question we knew after the draft was, can he convert pressures into sacks at the NFL level better than he did in college? I have a difficulty getting past the fact that last season Chop Robinson's only sacks against Power 5 teams were against Iowa and Rutgers. 2 sacks. 2 sacks all season in 10-plus games against Power 5 teams. And I know, obviously, he was top 5 in the country in win rate, rushing percentage. I know the natural skill set. I know the bend. I know the athleticism. I didn't have any great issue with the pick. But at some point at the NFL level, you have to convert those pressures into sacks. Will he be able to, even beyond the question of stopping the run? What's your confidence level that he can create pressure on the quarterback and get to the quarterback if needed as a rotation player early on in year one, which seems likely he'll be needed that way.
Yeah, I actually envision him as sort of an elephant player, a move around pass rusher. You pick the gap and you go for it because his get off is elite. I think that that's the number one trait that he has. I agree with you. He didn't finish plays, but he was quite impactful. I was one of those people who looked at the statistics and had to dig into the film. And I would say he made probably about 4 impact plays per game. Now it didn't correlate with the stat sheet, but it harassed the quarterback to the point where he's rushing a throw, or he's hit, or he's moved off his spot. Now, is finishing better just hand use or better closing? Yeah, I think you can teach a guy to finish, but what you can't teach is those rear athleticism traits, the get off. The one concern that I do have, which comes from somebody who coached him throughout his career in college, is that he does not necessarily have the toughness that they would like. And that's something that, I'm sorry, Chop Robinson, when Teron Armstead eventually decides that he's going to practice and steps on a practice field, that's going to be a different level of a human being that Chop Robinson has never faced in his life. Now, he's going to mostly go against Patrick Paul during these practices because Teron Armstead is shelved during training camp, as he should be. But Teron is a different human being. Teron is a technician. Teron is a beast. And Teron and Chop Robinson's going to face 8 Terons, maybe 6, during his NFL career as a rookie. And how you overcome those mental blocks and mental challenges and the chess game that they play, that's going to be the true challenge. But I don't necessarily worry so much about Chop Robinson. I worry about Mohamed Kamara because he's small for an edge player. Try hard, work hard, prove everybody wrong kind of guy. Well, that only goes so far for so long. And you have to have the physical ability to, again, set the edge and then get after the quarterback. But then I also have confidence that Calais Campbell can play that role. Calais Campbell has done it throughout his career. He's played edge. He's played a 5 technique. He's played a 4-3 end. He's played a defensive tackle. He's even moved inside to nose. And I think that the coaching staff has confidence, or Anthony Weaver has confidence that can help us get through this month or 6-week period where we don't have Jalen Phillips, we don't have Bradley Chubb, we don't have Cameron Good. But the question is, who else steps up when Calais moves from, next to Zach Sealer? Which defensive tackle or which nose tackle is going to step up and raise their hand and say, hey, I'm ready for 500, 600 snaps? And I don't know that answer.
And here's my question for you. It's 3rd and 8 in week 1 against Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence in a clear passing situation. Let's say you're a nickel, so you have 5 defensive backs on the field. Who then are your other 6 guys if Jalen Phillips is unavailable week 1, and we're hopeful that he will be able to play? He told ESPN in April he expects to be back for the season. We saw him run fluidly on video last week. But the presumption as well that Bradley Chubb won't be ready to start the season. Who are those other 6 guys that you have on the field in nickel against Jacksonville on 3rd and 8 besides Sealer and Calais Campbell? Name me the
Chop Robinson, Mohamed Kamara. Obviously, I got my cornerbacks, Fuller, Kohu, and
5 guys in the defensive backfield for
5
sure.
guys in defensive backs.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about the 6 rushers outside of Campbell and Sealer. Now, you'll have one inside linebacker on the field, probably Jordan Brooks rather than David Long, who obviously has issues in pass coverage, even though he's great against the run. And then you're going to need probably either the rookies or the 2 veterans who worked out on Monday. You're going to need a collection of those players, and they're going to somehow have to get to Trevor Lawrence or at least put pressure on him during that first game of the season. The hope is that Phillips would be able to play at least a partial game that week if his recovery continues to go well, but who knows? Obviously, the Dolphins aren't sharing any timetable, and you can't say with any degree of confidence that he's definitely going to be ready week 1. What to you is realistic based on these injuries for each guy? Now, the thing about Chubb I wanted to add is, even though everyone kind of expects maybe October because it's typically a 9 or 10 month process from an ACL sustained December 31st, which is what Chubb had in Baltimore. It is interesting that Jordan Brooks, his new teammate, sustained a torn ACL for the Seahawks on January 1st, 2023, and then came back and played in the Seahawks regular season opener the next year. So there is a model for this sort of unusually quick recovery that Chubb sees in Jordan Brooks. Not that anyone necessarily expects to see that with Bradley Chubb or with most players, but what's realistic to you as far as timetables for both?
I think 9 months is realistic for both players. We know they work out tremendously. This isn't Bradley Chubb's first ACL injury, so this isn't foreign territory for him. He knows how his body's going to respond. He knows when to dial it up and when to dial it down. I talked to a coach, that friend of mine, probably last month, and we were talking about ACL injuries, and he said he's got one player and he's doing freakish things at 7 months into the rehab. And I thought to myself, like, man, ACL injuries have gone a long way. Now, to me, the more troubling injury is the Achilles, because there's so many things that come with that in terms of atrophy, leg strength, other issues where the knee's compensating for the Achilles. So when you rush that, it could lead to other things. And just like an ACL, you rush that, it could lead to other things. So for me, I'm not a doctor. I only play one in a newspaper. I'm 9 months. At 9 months, I will think about clearing you. Before we get to 9 months, and I'm talking a full 9 months of rehab work, it's just too risky. And those two are two players that are too valuable. You got both who are going into critical seasons. Bradley Chubb, as for because Barry, you pay attention to the finances. His contract's just sitting out there like a big fat steak. When it comes to guaranteed money is up after this season. If the Dolphins want to get off it, they can get off it. And then you got Jalen Phillips, who's opted into his 5th-year option. Unlike Jalen Waddle, they did not sign him to a multi-year extension, because how can you really give a pass rusher a $100 million contract when he's coming off an Achilles injury and you don't know if he's going to be dynamic? Now, when Jalen Phillips got hurt, especially in that Jets game, was he phenomenal? Was he headed to superstardom? But man, it's risky when you're you can't compensate him and pay him for what you think he's going to do until he goes out there on the field and shows it. So for me, I'm being cautious with both players. This is a critical season for both. Don't rush into putting them on the field just because you have a need. And I don't think that's Mike McDaniel's approach either.
No, it's never been. In fact, they've been accused of being too cautious with guys. But with Chubb, the 9 months would mean an October return, potentially, ideally. And then obviously with Phillips, the 9 months could be a September return for the opener. But again, I don't think either of us is going to sit here and assure that he's going to be back for the opener. Hopeful, yes, but certain, no way. I would add this with the Van Ginkel thing. This is not a second guess, because the Dolphins cannot at all be criticized for Shaq Barrett retiring. But I did write in the print edition of the Miami Herald, for whatever that's worth, back in April, that I wondered why they would think that Barrett would be the better choice over Van Ginkel when the only difference in guaranteed money was $3.65 million. Now, I know you've made the point to me, Omar, that you don't think Van Ginkel would necessarily have been as good a fit in Weaver's system as he was in Fangio's system. Obviously, Fangio loved him, but to me, a player who's still in the prime of his career, fills the box score like Van Ginkel does with fumble recoveries and forced fumbles and interceptions and sacks and pressures. I just don't know why you would allow $3.65 million in guaranteed money for an owner worth billions. I know we're talking more about the cap than the actual spending, because Steve Ross spends anything practically that Chris Greer asks him to spend. I just don't know why that little a disparity in money made them go the direction of Shaq Barrett, who clearly was on the second half and downside of his career even before the shocking announcement on retirement. Looking back, either before the Shaq Barrett announcement or after, was that a mistake to not retain Van Ginkel, do you think?
I don't think it was, because, you were talking about an offseason where the Dolphins were pinching pennies. I mean, they restructured deals that weren't ideal for them to restructure just to get to the point where they can sign guys to 1-year deals, 1-year contracts, and build this roster. And I'm not going to sit here and criticize how they built the roster, because I looked at it player for player, pound for pound. And I would give this roster the edge over last year's roster, with the 2 exceptions. Christian Wilkins is a huge drop down. Even though Calais Campbell's a Hall of Fame player, it's a huge drop down losing Christian Wilkins. Now, would I pay Christian Wilkins $28 million a year for the next 3 years? Hell no, I wouldn't. That's just ridiculous price for a defensive tackle who finally started producing sacks. But you also lose Rob Hunt, and I don't think there's a comparable. I mean, are we really certain who's starting at guard? I mean, we
can't because of Wynn's question, because he's still recovering from the quadricep injury from the Sunday night Philadelphia game. So that to me would be, I don't want to say a nightmarish scenario. I wouldn't go that far, but that would be a big concern if you need two guys who've been traditionally backup guards. And Liam, Rob Jones has been a very solid player in his time here, and Driscoll, if you need both two of those three to start as opposed to one of them to start. By the way, I'm not sure I agree with you about this roster being better. I think offensively skill positions, they're better because of Jonnu Smith and his ability with Yak and the fact that Odell Beckham is better as a number 3 receiver than anyone they had. But I think in sum, losing Wilkins, losing Rob Hunt, and then playing in all likelihood the first month without Bradley Chubb, I think if you compare that to what the Dolphins had at their height last November, when that 1 week, the 1 week all year when everyone was healthy, when Jalen Ramsey came back, if you look at that roster compared to the roster that they have now with an injured Chubb, I'm not sure it's better. I think it's close because of Jonnu Smith and because of Beckham, but I'm not sure it's better. To me, that answer will rest mostly with two guys. Jordan Brooks, is he better than Jerome Baker? He might be. He's been a bigger volume tackler, but pass coverage has been a question with Brooks. He was pretty good in that area last year, not very good earlier in his career. And also Kendall Fuller. It's interesting, Omar, the range in opinion on Kendall Fuller. We have Pro Football Focus calling him the 8th best corner in the NFL, period. And then we have other metric sites that say, well, he's given up too high a percentage of targets in his passing area. To me, he's a good NFL corner. He's certainly not, as you know, someone who has a greater appreciation for Xavier Howard's work here than virtually anybody on earth. You know that he doesn't compare to Xavier Howard at his best. But is he at least going to be close to what Xavier gave you last year? I think it's fair to assume that he will be, unless he regresses a lot. So I think it's a comparable team to last year. I don't know that it's a better team than last year.
Let me say this to defend my opinion on the Xavier Howard versus Kendall Fuller switcheroo. And I say this and people get angry at me. Xavier Howard has 13 more interceptions than him in their career, which started at the same time. And Xavier has played less games primarily because of injuries. If I have Barry, 13 interceptions is a hell of a career. And that's just, I have 13 more than him. Now, right. I will say this because this comparison bothers me. The last 2 years, I've watched Xavier Howard practice against Tyreek Hill. You know, the only person who's ever covered Tyreek Hill that I've ever seen?
Who?
Xavier Howard. And he doesn't do it with help. He just does it on a regular basis. Now, Xavier Howard has the experience of covering and shadowing the NFL's best receivers. Yes, he has not stayed healthy. Yes, he's gone through battle number injury. Right now, he's coming back from a foot injury, which is the reason why he hasn't been signed. But we know when he's healthy, he's an elite ball hawk. Do you know if Kendall Fuller is a ball hawk? Do you know with Xavier, when the ball is put at just not the right place, and let's say he's healthy, he's got about a 50-50 chance of bringing that down. Can we say the same thing about Kendall Fuller? I don't think we can. But I think what we can say about Kendall Fuller is he's a better zone cornerback than Xavier is. I think he's probably going to mesh well with Jalen Ramsey a little bit better than Xavier because he can go a lot of different places. And I think Jalen Ramsey is going to be moved around. He's a versatile cornerback who's established and accomplished and knows his assignments and plays better in zone. But let's not pretend like he's this stud that Washington didn't even try to re-sign him. Like, if a team says, thanks, but no thanks for $7 million, let's not act like, this guy is going to be saving your franchise. But I will argue with you, Barry. I think they're better at inside linebacker, not just Jordan Brooks, but Anthony Walker, who impressed me during OTAs and minicamp. I think they're better at safety. Marcus May and Jordan Poyer have accomplished far more than what Brandon Jones and what is his name? Can't even remember.
Deshaun Elliott.
Deshaun Elliott have accomplished during their career. I would argue to you that let's not understate the Jonnu Smith. And you mentioned this Jonnu Smith, Odell Beckham. That should add huge elements to your offense that was missing last year. The Jalen Wright, that's a huge addition to your offense. If let's just say he's half of what Devon Achane was, and then I'm not comfortable with what they've done at offense and defensive line, but I like the fact that there are options and bodies there. And Rob Hunt's $100 million player. I love Rob. I'm not paying Rob $100 million.
It's hard for any guard.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify that in the cap era to pay that much for any guard as good as Rob Hunt is. I did want to make an extra point to you about Fuller, which I find interesting. He allowed 10 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, but the thing with him is he forced a tight window throw on 48% of his targets in man coverage. That's 4th best in the NFL last season. So he generally stays close to guys. He doesn't give up too many touchdowns. If you look from a metric standpoint, his numbers compared to Xavier's were very comparable over the last 2 years. Xavier was better last year than Kendall Fuller was in Washington. Fuller, by any statistical measure, was better than Howard was in 2022 when Xavier was having trouble. So I just want to add one more thing on Kendall Fuller. 2022, he was very good, 84.5 passer rating against. Last year, 102 passer rating against. Allowed 6 touchdowns, 2 picks last year. Started the first 15 games, missed the last 2. So I think in Kendall Fuller, they're getting a good player. Are they getting a great corner? No, but they're getting someone who should be at least serviceable. As far as the other comparisons you raised, I would agree with you. Brooks, probably a slight upgrade over Jerome Baker, but I don't think it's an appreciable difference. Offensive line, I share the same concerns with you. To me, so much depends on whether you're going to get 15 games out of Armstead instead of 10, and also will Isaiah Wynn be ready week 1? So those would be my issues, offensive line. What are the and I want to mention also the point you made about defensive line. That's the area of the team that I was extremely down on mid-March after the first week of free agency, when all we saw was the Neville Gallimores and the Jonathan Harrises of the world. But the way they've rebounded since, signing Tart, who was an effective run stopper in Tennessee before he had a falling out with Vrabel, and then obviously signing Calais Campbell. You were on that train since day one. In fact, I saw you walking the streets of downtown Miami in a Calais Campbell jersey. Not a lot of people know this, that you were the impetus for the Dolphins signing Calais Campbell. So with those two, I feel much better about defensive line than I did earlier in the offseason. I know you had concerns about Tart's conditioning in the offseason program. That'll be worth monitoring beginning this week. But that's the position where I felt absolutely like it could be catastrophic after the first week of free agency. Now I feel it'll be good enough there.
Yeah, my thing is, and I talked to some of the position coaches, and they basically said it's a whole lot of guys with a lot to prove. And these are players that basically signed 1 year, $1.8 million deals, $1.6 million deals. So they're worker bees. They're try hard guys. Even Deshaun Hand, who's been here. Everybody who you feel like you haven't had a fair shake in your NFL career, well, here's your opportunity. You want a starting role in the NFL. You want to be the next Zach Sealer. Well, here it is. Zach Sealer is a guy who you keep what you kill, and he kept his starting role and his job from the minute he got here off waivers from Baltimore. So this is your opportunity to prove that you want to be a NFL starter in the NFL. So we'll figure it out. When the pads come on, it'll be interesting to watch the trenches and see how they play primarily against this offensive line. I'm really interested in see how they work again in the exhibition season and the joint scrimmages, but who knows? But we will see during training camp. We will be here at Dolphins in Depth, providing you daily podcasts whenever the Dolphins do some actions, breaking it down for you, giving you my stock up, stock down, top performers of the day. We'll be here providing you all the news and nuggets and information and Barry's buzz. So hopefully you'll continue to tune in at training camp. We've also got a Miami Herald promotion, $30. Actually, it's free for the first 30 months. So hopefully you'll take advantage
of that. And all of
that.
our stories, which we've written over the last few months, you can read for free during a 30-day window. Hopefully you'll sign on and subscribe after that. Omar and I will have a million stories for you over the months to come.
All right. Always a pleasure, Barry, and we will see you later this week.